Thea Voss touched the sensor display. A red boundary line cut across the projection. It looked like a scar. The navigation center smelled of recycled air and old fear. The fleet had crossed it 3 hours ago. 23 ships, 4,892 souls. A single frozen oak sprig in the flagship's greenhouse. That was the sum of humanity now. Thea touched the data pad at her belt. She did not need to look at it. The names were burned into her memory. Every name, every face, every death she had failed to prevent. 11 years of running. The door hissed open behind her. She did not turn, she knew the footsteps. "Contact," Wren said. His voice carried a flat tone. The tone of someone who reported bad news too many times. He stopped beside her. His reflection hung in the glass over the display. Graying temples, eyes that stopped hoping years ago. "Where?" Thea asked. "Extreme range, bearing 317 Mark 12, pacing us." She pulled up the tactical overlay. A single icon appeared at the edge of sensor range. Yellow, unidentified, the fleet's own transponder signals clustered in the center. Small, vulnerable. "Signature." Wren shook his head. "Nothing in the archives." He paused. "Not Mirathi." Thea knew the word. The Mirathi were a species from old intelligence files. They were tall beings. They had pale green skin and compound eyes. They claimed this sector by ancestral right. He shook his head again. "Not Strikavar." The Strikavar were different. They were bronze-scaled merchants. They operated through contracts and leases. They valued trade over territory. "Not anything we've logged." Thea studied the icon. It held position. It did not accelerate. It did not fall back. It matched their drift exactly. "Change course," she said. 10 degrees port. Increase thrust to 0.3 gravities. Take us toward the nebula." Wren did not question the order. He relayed it to the helm. The deck vibrated beneath their feet. The remembrance adjusted its burn. The yellow icon on the display shifted. 10 degrees port. Identical course change, 0.3 gravities, matched thrust. Thea felt something cold settle in her chest. "It's mirroring us," Wren said. His voice was quiet now. "I see it. Should I raise a broadcast?" She considered the question. The fleet had no diplomatic protocols, no standing to negotiate. Earth could offer nothing, not to a vessel with that kind of precision. "No," she said, "not yet." The yellow icon maintained its position, patient, silent, watching. Thea watched it too. The minutes passed. The nebula grew larger on the forward display, a wall of gas and dust. It offered concealment. It also offered blindness. Inside, they would see little. The unknown vessel would not need to see them. Its sensors were clearly superior to their own. "Communications array," Thea said. "Full spectrum passive listen. Tell me if they transmit anything, any frequency, any modulation." Wren nodded. He moved to the comm station. He worked the controls with practiced hands. The silence stretched. Thea kept her eyes on the display. The yellow icon continued to mirror them. It did not close distance. It did not fall away. It held its distance. The gap was the same as from first contact. She had seen this behavior before. The behavior of a creature not hunting. It was hurting. "I think they're hurting us," she said. Wren turned from the comm station. His expression did not change. He had seen too much. Nothing surprised him anymore. "Where?" Thea did not have an answer. She stared at the display. 23 ships, 4,892 people, a single sprig of oak from a world that no longer existed. And something patient in the dark behind them. "Run a pattern analysis," she said. "Compare our current course against every known trade route, migration corridor, and territorial boundary in this sector. Tell me what we're being pushed toward." Wren hesitated. "Thea, that data set will take hours to process. The navigation computer." "Do it." He stopped arguing. He turned back to the console. He began the work. Thea watched the yellow icon. It watched her back. The nebula swallowed the fleet an hour later. Gas and dust painted the external cameras. They showed swirls of muted orange and gray. The stars vanished. The sensor range dropped. It was less than a quarter of its normal reach. The yellow icon vanished too. But Thea did not believe it was gone. She stood at the display for another 2 hours. Wren finished his analysis. He brought her the results on a datapad. She read them in silence. 3 primary destinations lay along their forced course. The first was a Mirathi orbital processing station. The Mirathi had compound eyes. Their skin was pale green. They claimed this region by ancestral right. The second destination was a Strikavar staging depot. The Strikavar were bronze-scaled and mercantile. They built their stations inside hollowed asteroids. The third was a neutral way station. It was operated by a Gemery trade consortium. The Gemery were silicon-based entities. They were encased in faceted shells. Their shells refracted light in prismatic patterns. None of them had ever acknowledged humanity's existence. Thea handed the datapad back to Ren. "Wake the senior staff. I want a meeting in 15 minutes. Everyone. He left without another word. Thea remained at the display. She looked at the nebula's swirling wall. Somewhere beyond it, something waited. Something had decided not to destroy them. Something had decided not to speak to them. Something had decided to move them. She touched the datapad at her belt again. 4,892 names. Every name she was responsible for. She turned from the display. She walked toward the briefing room. The deck hummed beneath her boots. The air cycled through the vents. The ship lived. For now, the briefing room was small. 11 officers sat around a table. It had once seated 20. Thea stood at the head of the table. She did not sit. "We have a contact," she said. "Unknown vessel, superior sensors. It matched every course change we made. It stopped following us inside the nebula." The room was quiet. "I think it's hurting us," she said. "The pattern analysis shows 3 possible destinations. All of them involve contact. Contact with species that have ignored us for 11 years. Commander Saul Teska spoke first. He was the fleet's engineering lead. He had kept 23 ships running. They ran on salvage and desperation. He had not slept more than 4 hours in a single night for 8 years. "Can we break contact?" he asked. "I don't know," Thea said. "I don't know its capabilities. I don't know the reason. It chose to push us instead of destroy us." "Then what do we do?" Lieutenant Leora Ayala asked. She ran the fleet's defense network. It was a generous term. The fleet's network had only 6-point defense cannons. The decoy system had failed twice in the last year. Thea looked at her officers. They were tired. They were thin. They had kept humanity alive. Their sheer, stubborn refusal to stop was the reason. "We prepare for contact," Thea said. "We must assume a delivery. Someone is receiving us. We must assume their decision is not yet made." She paused. "We must assume one chance to make them decide in our favor." The room absorbed that in silence. Thea straightened her posture. She had nothing to offer them. No weapons that mattered, no allies, no home. She had only the story she could tell. And she would tell it as well as any human who had ever lived. "Dismissed," she said. "Ren, stay." The officers filed out. The door closed behind them. Ren remained seated. "You have the look," he said. "What look?" The look you get before doing something terrifying." Thea almost smiled. It did not reach her eyes. "I don't know our destination," she said. "But I know our cargo. We have the archive. We have the oak. We have 4,892 people. They remember home. They remember its meaning." She met his gaze. "That is our weapon, Ren, our story. A species lost everything. It kept going." Ren was quiet for a long moment. "Will that be enough?" he asked. Thea looked toward the viewport. The nebula swirled in orange and gray. Somewhere beyond it, something waited. "I don't know," she said. She turned back to him. "But I'm going to tell it anyway." The door seal groaned. Thea stepped into the navigation center. Ren was already at the console. "They're hailing us," he said. His voice was clipped and tight. The main screen flickered. Static resolved into a face. It did not belong to any species in the fleet's database. The creature had scales the color of tarnished bronze. Its eyes were vertical slits. They had no visible pupil. It spoke in galactic standard. Its voice sounded like grinding stone. "You are inside Strikavar territory. You will cease all forward motion. A parley will occur." The transmission ended. Thea stared at the blank screen. She checked the fleet chronometer. 11 years of running. Now someone wanted to talk. "Navigation, kill all thrust," she said. "Signal the rest of the fleet, full stop." Ren turned from his station. "We don't know what they are." "We know they found us," Thea said flatly. "We know they have guns, that's enough." The fleet drifted to a halt. 4 minutes passed. A shape detached from the Strikavar scout. It burned toward the Remembrance. The approach vector was gentle. It was a shuttle, unarmed, painted in Merchant Guild colors. Thea met it at the main airlock. 2 security officers stood with her. She wore her command jacket over civilian clothes. She wanted to look like a decision-maker, not like someone out of options. The airlock cycled open. The Strikavar envoy was taller than any human in the fleet. It had to duck through the hatch. Its scales caught the corridor light. They threw back bronze reflections. It carried a data rod in one 4-fingered hand. The rod was sealed with a Merchant League insignia, 3 overlapping circles. Thea recognized them from old intelligence files. "I am Mirathi," it said. "I represent the Strikavar Trading Collective. You will hear my offer." Thea nodded. She led the way to the conference room. Mirathi did not sit. It stood at the head of the table. It laid the data rod flat in front of itself. The gesture was deliberate, formal. "The Ashen Drift has entered a contested zone," Mirathi said. "The Mirathi claim this region by ancestral right. The Strikavar claim it by mercantile lease. Neither party wants your fleet here." Thea folded her arms. "We didn't choose this course. Your scout herded us here." "Correct," Mirathi said. "It was efficient. You followed the path of least resistance, most species do." Ren shifted beside her. She felt his tension. It was a physical weight in the room. "What do you want?" Thea asked. Her tone was measured. Mirathi placed a hand on the data rod. "The Strikavar will provide safe passage through our territory. We will grant you access to Vrankel Station for resupply and repairs. Your fleet will not be fired upon." "And the price?" Thea pressed. Her voice was cautious. "You accept a diplomatic fiction," Mirathi said. "You become a provisional asset of the Strikavar Legion, a legal formality, a flag of convenience. In exchange for our protection, your people exist on paper as our subsidiary." Thea understood. The words landed like stones in her chest. She was being asked to sign away independence. A contract, a temporary classification. The Mirathi would recognize it. The Strikavar would use the human fleet as leverage in negotiations. The humans would survive. Ren stepped forward. "You're asking us to become property." Mirathi tilted its head. "You are asking to become alive tomorrow. The distinction is practical." "We can't trust them," Ren said. He was looking at Thea now. "We don't know their laws. We don't know the meaning of subsidiary. We could sign this. We might never leave." Thea looked at the data rod. It glowed faintly, waiting for a marker. She thought about the 4,892 people on the fleet manifest. She thought about the children in the lower decks. She thought about the food stores. They would run dry in 7 months. She pressed her thumb to the data rod's surface. A small needle pricked her skin. The device read her genetic marker. It recorded it with a soft chime. Mirathi picked up the rod. "The transaction is complete. You will have coordinates for Vrankel Station within the hour. Do not deviate from the course we provide." The Strikavar envoy turned. It walked out of the conference room. Its footsteps echoed down the corridor. The airlock cycled shut behind it. Thea did not move. Ren stood frozen at the table. His hands were white-knuckled against the edge. She left him there. She walked through the empty corridors to her quarters. She sealed the door behind her. The room was small. A bunk, a desk. A wall display showed the fleet formation, and on the shelf above the desk, a small glass case. Inside it was an oak sprig. She had carried it from Earth. 11 years. It had dried, it had browned, it had lost every leaf, but the shape of it remained, the branching structure, the memory of its tree. She touched the glass with her fingertips. "Earth would not have accepted this deal," she whispered. The words hung in the empty room. She lowered her hand. "Earth is gone." She stood there for a long time. The fleet chronometer ticked forward. The corridor hummed with recycled air. Somewhere on the lower decks, a child laughed. The door opened behind her. Ren stood in the doorway. His voice was tight with anger. "You just sold us. The species does not even know what a human looks like." Eskelvar entered the processing room on Shard 7. She sat behind her desk. The room was cold. Heat slowed her thoughts. Her desk held only a data screen and a stylus. The walls were bare metal. No windows, no decoration. The Strikavar did not decorate. The human contract arrived on her terminal at shift start. Var opened the file. She scanned the summary. 23 ships, 4,892 individuals, no homeworld, no military allies, no strategic resources. She read the species description twice. Mammalian, bipedal, short lifespans, high emotional volatility. Var tapped her stylus against the desk. The humans had survived a planetary extinction event. That was noteworthy. It was not useful. Survival without resources was just prolonged suffering. She filed the contract as a low-priority administrative task, 3 days until arrival. She would process the paperwork then. Shift passed without incident. Var reviewed supply manifests for the station's garrison. She approved a shipment of coolant cells. She denied a request for decorative paneling. She scheduled a maintenance cycle for the docking clamps on Bay 7. The human contract sat at the bottom of her queue. She did not open it again. The next shift began with a priority alert. Var expected a supply disruption or a security breach. Instead, she found a communication request from the human refugee fleet. She read the message twice. The human delegate requested a cultural exchange. She was a female named Thea Voss. Var blinked her nictitating membranes. The gesture was involuntary, cultural exchange. The humans were 3 days from docking at a neutral station. Their ships were running on reserve fuel. Their population was a rounding error in galactic demographics, and they wanted to exchange culture. She considered the request for exactly 4 seconds. The Strikavar policy on cultural exchanges was clear. They were permitted. They were not encouraged. They served no measurable strategic purpose. Var approved the request out of boredom. She sent a return message. It granted permission for a single encrypted transmission. Then she moved on to the water reclamation report. The humans were not her priority. The transmission arrived 12 hours later. Var opened it on her terminal. She expected a greeting or a formal statement of intent. The humans provided neither. The recording showed a single human female. She sat in a plain room. Thea Voss, the same delegate from the contract file. Her face was pale. Her eyes were dark. She spoke in her native language. Translated subtitles appeared beneath. The story began. It was about a small creature. A rabbit, the translation said. The rabbit lived in a field. The field had tall grass. A predator stalked the field. A fox. The fox was faster. It was stronger. It was hungrier. Var watched with her head tilted. The rabbit could not fight the fox. It could not outrun the fox in a straight race. It had no weapons, no armor, no allies. The rabbit used the tall grass. It doubled back. It hid in burrows. It waited until the fox passed. Then it ran in the opposite direction. The fox grew frustrated. The fox grew tired. The fox gave up. The rabbit survived. Var stopped the recording. She replayed the final section. The rabbit survived. The ending was improbable. The predator should have won. That was the natural order. Strength consumed weakness. Speed caught slowness. That was not cruelty. It was physics. She dismissed the story as irrational noise. The humans were emotional creatures. They told comforting lies to themselves. It meant nothing. Var closed the file and moved on. But something caught her attention later that shift. She checked the human fleet's communication logs, standard procedure for incoming vessels. The logs showed a sudden change in broadcast patterns. The humans had stopped transmitting distress signals. They were no longer requesting emergency docking priority. They were no longer broadcasting their fuel levels or their casualty counts. They were transmitting the rabbit story on a loop. Var pulled up the signal analysis. The broadcast was low bandwidth. It consumed almost no power. It was not a plea for help. It was not a negotiation tactic. It was a statement. She read the transcript again. The rabbit used the tall grass. It doubled back. It hid. It waited. Var filed a report. She described the behavior as unusual. She noted the cessation of distress signals. She noted the shift to narrative broadcast. She recommended observation but no action. The report was marked as received. Then it was archived. Her supervisor did not comment. 3 hours before the humans were scheduled to dock, Var's terminal chimed. It was a priority request. She opened it. It was another message from Thea Voss. The human female looked the same as before. Tired, composed, she spoke in the same flat tone. The recording was short, only 40 seconds. Thea Voss said, "We know your perception of us. We know the file's contents. We want you to understand one thing. We are the rabbit. We have always been the rabbit, and the fox has never won." The recording ended. Var sat in the silence of her office. She replayed the message 3 times. The human's voice did not waver. Her eyes did not blink. She delivered the words like a statement of fact. Var stood up from her desk. She walked to the station's observation deck. She looked through the reinforced glass. The human fleet approached, 23 small ships, patched hulls, flickering engine trails. They looked fragile. They looked desperate. They did not look afraid. She watched them for a long time. The ships moved in formation. tight, precise. They had been running for 11 years. They had lost their homeworld. They had lost their history. They had lost nearly everything. So much was gone. The things that made them a species were gone. They were still running. Var returned to her desk. She opened a direct channel to her supervisor. The connection clicked open after 3 seconds. "Supervisor Krell," she said, "I am amending my report on the human contract." Krell's voice was flat. "State the amendment." Var looked at the frozen image of Thea Voss on her terminal. The human female's face was still. Her eyes were dark and steady. "They have only one interesting quality," Var said. "They are not afraid." She closed the channel. The human ships grew larger in the viewport. They would dock within the hour. Var had prepared the paperwork. She had assigned the docking clamps. She had scheduled the inspection crew. She had not prepared for the silence in their transmissions. The rabbit story played on a loop. It came from 23 ships. Eskel Var sat at her desk and waited. Tamsin Lyall felt the vibration through the deck plates. The docking clamps groaned against the Remembrance hull. The announcement followed. Shore leave was authorized for all non-essential personnel. She did not feel like celebrating. The station was called Vrankel. It was a Strikavar staging post. It was built inside a hollowed asteroid. The docking ring alone could hold 40 ships. Only 12 were currently berthed. The human fleet filled nearly half the available slots. Tamsin stepped through the airlock. She entered a corridor of bare stone. The air smelled of ozone and something metallic. She adjusted her translation device and walked. The port was crowded. A group of Strikavar guards stood near a cargo hatch. Their bronze scales caught the amber light. Beyond them, a trader pulsed faint colors across a mycelium mat. The trader was a sporewind. It was a symbiotic network of fungal threads. The threads communicated through bioluminescent rhythms. A crystalline figure floated past. It did not acknowledge anyone. The figure was a Gemmery observer. The Gemmery were silicon-based entities. They were encased in faceted shells. The shells refracted light in prismatic patterns. Tamsin noticed something immediate. The other species avoided the humans, not with hostility, not with fear, with complete indifference. A human crewman approached a Strikavar vendor. The man tried to speak. The vendor turned away. Another human tried to ask for directions. They approached the sporewind trader. The trader retracted its sensory tendrils. It moved off without response. Tamsin watched for 10 minutes. No one spoke to her. No one looked at her. She was a ghost in a crowd of living beings. She found the sporewind trader near a ventilation shaft. The creature was a mat of gray mycelium. It was spread across a heated platform. Bioluminescent pulses rippled through its surface. The translation device identified it as Xyla. Tamsin approached slowly. She kept her hands visible. She waited. A pulse of soft green light rolled across the mat. Tamsin spoke into her translator. "I am Tamsin Lyall. I'm a cultural specialist for the human refugee fleet. May I ask you a question?" The mycelium shifted. A tendril rose. It extended toward her face. It stopped a handspan from her cheek. The translator rendered the pulse pattern as a single word. "Ask." Tamsin kept her voice steady. "Why will no one speak to us?" Her voice strained. The mat rippled with a long blue pulse. The translator processed it. "You are a null entry in the ledger." "I do not understand." The tendril withdrew. The colors shifted to a dull amber. "You have no resources, no territory, no technology worth trading. Your history does not matter to the galaxy. You are nothing of value. Why would anyone speak to you?" Tamsin felt the words land like stones in her chest. "We have knowledge, we have skills, we have stories." "Stories?" The translation rendered the pulse as flat and dismissive. "Stories are not currency. Stories do not refuel ships. Stories do not repair hull breaches. You bring nothing. You are nothing." The mat darkened. The conversation was over. Tamsin walked back to the remembrance. The word echoed in her skull. Nothing. She found Thea in the command center. Thea stood at the navigation console. Her back was to the door. Tamsin reported what she had learned. Thea did not react with anger. She turned slowly. She looked at Tamsin with tired eyes. "Zero," Thea said. "We are a zero on their balance sheet." "Yes." Thea leaned against the console. "Then what do we have that they want?" Tamsin searched her memory. She ran through every cultural theory, every diplomatic principle, every negotiation strategy. She found nothing. "I cannot answer that," she said. Thea nodded. "Neither can I, not yet. Keep watching." That night Tamsin walked through the commercial district. The station had a central market. It was carved from the asteroid core. Stalls sold food, others sold components. A few sold information. The crowd moved around her like water around a stone. A Strikavar guard checked a cargo manifest. The Sporwine merchant pulsed a series of rapid green flashes. A Gemery observer stood motionless near a display of crystalline data shards. No one looked at her. Then she saw something wrong. A Mirathi delegation stood near the observation window. They were tall and angular. Their skin was the color of burnt copper. They were pointing at the docking ring. They were pointing at the human ships. Tamsin stopped walking. One of the Mirathi held a recording device. Another was speaking into a communicator. They were documenting everything: ship configurations, hull markings, fleet composition. They were building a case. Tamsin ran. She reached the Remembrance airlock in under 3 minutes. She did not stop for clearance. She did not stop for explanations. She ran through the corridors. She burst into the command center. Thea was there. Ren was there. 3 other officers stood at their stations. Mirathi, Tamsin gasped. They are recording our ships. They are documenting everything. Thea's expression did not change. She turned to the sensor display. A single Mirathi vessel sat at the far end of the docking ring. It was a sleek craft. It had angular hull plates. Thea stared at the image for a long moment. Then she spoke. "We are a weapon now. We just did not know it." Tamsin felt the words hit her like a physical blow. "What do you mean?" Thea pointed at the Mirathi ship. "The Strikavar signed a contract with us. They gave us protection. They gave us docking rights. But the Mirathi have a territorial claim on this sector. They will argue a point. The Strikavar cannot make unilateral agreements with unaffiliated species. They will argue another point. The Strikavar violated the border treaty." Ren stepped forward. "So the Mirathi are using us as evidence." "Exactly." Thea's voice was flat. "We are a legal instrument. We are a treaty violation given hull and engines. The Mirathi do not care about us. They care about our existence. They care about its meaning for their claim." Tamsin looked at the sensor display. The Mirathi vessel was still recording. "What do we do with that?" Thea did not answer. She stood in silence. Her eyes did not leave the screen. The command center hummed. The low thrum of life support systems filled the room. No one spoke. Tamsin waited. Thea did not answer. Thea stepped into the Wanderer. It was a hollow sphere of polished obsidian. The gravel mine mediator sat at the center of the chamber. It was a mass of dark crystalline shards. The shards were held in a suspended web of magnetic fields. The fields hummed. The frequency vibrated through the deck plates. Thea felt the hum in her teeth. She stood at a low podium on the human side of the chamber. Ren and Tamsin flanked her. The Mirathi delegation occupied the opposite arc. 3 of them, tall figures with pale green skin and too many joints. Their eyes were compound lenses. They caught the light in fragments. The Strikavar delegate was Eskelvar. Thea recognized her from the files. A silver-scaled administrator. A surgical implant sat where her left eye should have been. The implant pulsed a slow amber rhythm. Var did not look at the humans. She addressed her statements to the gravel mind. The mediator vibrated a query. The sound translated through the deck as a rhythmic thumping. A translation drone hovered near the ceiling. It rendered the pulses into standard speech. The Mirathi spoke first. Their lead delegate raised a data rod. A hologram bloomed above the chamber floor. It showed the human fleet in transit, 23 ships, no visible weapon mounts, no missile batteries, no point defense grids. The Mirathi delegate said the fleet had no combat capability. The contract was therefore a legal fiction. The Strikavar had gained nothing of military value. They were simply using human presence to claim territorial rights. Thea watched the hologram rotate. Her ships looked small, they looked fragile, they looked exactly like what they were. Eskelvar responded. Her voice was flat and procedural. She cited clauses. She cited precedents. She cited the legal definition of a strategic asset. The gravel mind vibrated a question. Was the human fleet capable of offensive action? Var paused. Thea knew that pause. It was the silence of a mind searching for a lie that would hold. Var had nothing. The humans had no guns, no torpedoes, no electronic warfare suites. They had a library of old books. They had a greenhouse with a single oak sapling. Var said no. The fleet was not capable of offensive action. The Mirathi delegate made a sound. a soft clicking, laughter or satisfaction. Thea stepped forward. The gravel mind vibrated acknowledgement. The translation drone spoke. The human delegate may address the chamber. Thea did not look at the law books. She did not look at the data rods. She looked at Strikavar. She said there was a place called Earth. It was blue and green. It was full of water. It had been home to 8 billion people. They had built cities and songs and ships. They had written poems about the stars. She talked about the day it ended, not with fire, with silence, a signal from somewhere deep. Then the atmosphere began to drift. The oceans boiled in slow motion. 8 billion became 4 million. 4 million became 4,000. She talked about the oak sprig. A cutting from a tree. The tree had stood for 300 years. Children had climbed it. Lovers had carved their names into it. That tree was gone now. But the cutting lived in a greenhouse on a ship with no guns. Thea said the fleet carried no weapons. That was true. They carried something else. She told the chamber about the rabbit. The Mirathi delegate interrupted. The translation drone relayed his words. This testimony was irrelevant. The mediator should rule on the legal question. The gravel mind vibrated slowly. The hum changed pitch. It was considering. Thea kept speaking. She said the Strikavar had agreed to protect the fleet. Not because the fleet could fight. Not because it could pay. Because the Strikavar saw a species at the edge of extinction. They chose to let it pass through. That was not a transaction. That was a debt. The debt belonged to the humans. They would carry it. They would remember it. That was what humans did. They remembered. They told stories about their saviors. Those stories lasted longer than any weapon. The chamber fell silent. The gravel mind vibrated its final observation. The testimony contained no legal argument. It contained no factual evidence relevant to the arbitration. The matter would be adjourned for further review. The Mirathi delegate stood. He adjusted focus. His compound eyes clicked. He looked at Thea. He said nothing. He left. The Strikavar guard near the rear wall had not moved. Bronze scales caught the light. Weaponize, the same envoy from the airlock. He had stopped writing. His data slate hung loose in his grip. His eyes were fixed on Thea. She walked toward the exit. Ren and Tamsin followed. The hum of the gravel mind faded behind them. A voice stopped her in the corridor. Weaponize. He stood in the archway. His claws rested on the frame. His tail twitched once. He said he wanted a private meeting. Thea nodded. He led her to a small room, bare metal walls, a single light panel dimmed to amber, no furniture. Weaponize did not sit. He stood with his arms folded. His voice was low and rough. He said the Mirathi were right. The contract had no legal substance. The Strikavar leadership knew this. They had expected the arbitration to fail. They had already prepared a countersuit. Thea said she knew. Weaponize tilted his head. His pupils dilated. He said the humans had no military value. They had no trade value. They had no territorial value. By every measurable metric, they were worthless. Thea waited. Weaponize said she had made it sound like honor. He spoke a fact. The Strikavar language had no word for that. Thea looked at him. Her hands were steady. Her voice was quiet. Then learn it. Strikavar walked into the Strikavar command center. The air smelled of ozone and recycled metal. She stood before a holotank. It showed the human fleet. The fleet was pinned between two forces. Mirathi patrol cruisers held the spinward edge. Strikavar garrison ships blocked the trailing zone. The humans had nowhere to go. Her superior spoke. He did not look at her. Fleet Master Thesek kept his yellow eyes fixed on the display. His voice carried the flat precision of a merchant ledger. The human contract is voided. The fleet will be abandoned to the Mirathi. Var felt her throat membranes tighten. She forced her voice to remain level. We signed an agreement. We accepted their cultural transmission. They are under our protection. Thesek turned. His scales caught the cold light. The gesture was a correction. The protection clause was contingent on mutual strategic value. The humans have none. The Mirathi have offered trade concessions for non-interference. The math is simple. Var stood very still. She knew the math. She also knew its omission. She left the meeting chamber without another word. The corridor stretched long and empty. Her claws clicked against the deck plating. She passed Sporwine traders. They did not meet her eyes. She passed Gemery technicians. They continued their work in silence. Word had spread. The humans were already dead. Everyone simply waited for the bodies to catch up. Var reached the human docking bay. The airlock cycled open. She stepped through. The bay was chaos, not panic, preparation. Humans moved with a new speed. She had not seen it before. They carried cargo pallets. They welded metal plates over exposed conduits. They ran diagnostic cables between ships. She found Thea Voss near an open maintenance hatch. The human commander held a power wrench in one hand. Her face carried a familiar stillness. Var had seen it during the testimony. A calm. It did not belong to anyone about to die. Thea saw her. She did not smile. She simply waited. Var gestured toward the bay. Your people are arming themselves with repair tools. You have no weapons, no armor, no tactical advantage. Thea nodded. She turned a bolt with deliberate care. Surrender requires a certain species, one that expects to survive. We no longer expect that. She looked up. Her eyes held something Var could not name. It was not fear, it was not hope. It was something else entirely. We expect only to make them remember us. Var felt the words land somewhere deep, somewhere she had not known existed. She turned. She walked back through the airlock. She did not go to her quarters. She did not file a report. She walked directly to the Strikavar command center. The room was nearly empty. 2 junior operators monitored sensor feeds. They looked up as she entered. She ignored them. She sat at an auxiliary console. Her claws moved across the interface. She called up the cultural exchange log. The human story was still there. The rabbit, the fox, the tall grass. She activated the station's primary broadcast transmitter. It was a military-grade unit. It could reach every Strikavar vessel in the sector. It could reach the Merchant League relays. It could reach the Mirathi patrol. She pressed the recording activation. Her voice came out steady. She did not prepare words. She let the truth speak itself. This is Administrator Eskel Var of Shard 7. I am broadcasting a cultural transmission. It was received from the human refugee fleet. The transmission is unaltered. She played the story. The rabbit moved through grass. The fox followed scent. The rabbit held still. The fox passed. The story ended. Var leaned toward the pickup. Her voice carried no official tone. It carried something older. These are the beings we abandoned. She shut down the transmitter. The junior operators stared at her. One of them opened his mouth. She raised a hand. He closed it. She sat in the silence and waited. The broadcast spread. Its speed was unexpected. Within 1 cycle, the Sporewind relay network picked it up. Within 2 cycles, the Gemery received it. Within 3, the Gravel Mind acknowledged its existence. The Gemery analyzed its narrative structure. They found patterns they could not classify. The Sporewind simply transmitted it again. They added no commentary. The Gravel Mind filed a curiosity note. The null entity showed no reaction. This was expected. The null entity was a passive observer. It never acted, a sensor anomaly. The anomaly absorbed all transmissions but emitted nothing. It was a blank space in the galactic network, a signal sink holding no opinion, a sink giving no response. But the Strikavar middle ranks did react. Var began receiving messages, first a trickle, then a flood. Deck officers, logistics specialists, junior pilots. They did not ask for clarification. They asked one question. Why would a species with nothing still fight? Var had no answer. She had asked herself the same question. The human commander had given an answer. Var did not fully understand it. The answer was not logical. It was not strategic. It was something the math could not hold. She sat at her console. She read the messages. They kept arriving. Each one carried the same confusion. Each one carried the same seed. The Mirathi intercepted the broadcasts. Intelligence analysts flagged an anomaly. Strikavar personnel were showing reduced compliance. They were delaying patrol routes. They were asking questions. The Mirathi patrol paused its advance. Var saw the change on the holotank. The red icons stopped moving. The yellow icons held position. The green icons remained scattered across the Merchant League. She watched the display for a long time. The door opened behind her. She did not turn. Fleet Master Thesic stepped into the room. His footsteps carried a different weight now. He spoke slowly. He seemed to taste each word before its release. The Mirathi have requested clarification. They want an explanation. Why are our personnel transmitting defector stories? Var did not look away from the display. It is not a defector story. It is a survival story. Thesic stood beside her. His reflection appeared in the holotank. His scales were darker now, tighter. The distinction matters to them. Var turned to face him. She kept her voice flat. Good. Thesic stared at her. His jaw worked. Then he turned and walked out. Var looked back at the display. The Mirathi patrol remained stationary. The human fleet remained trapped. But something had shifted. Something new entered the calculation. No one had predicted it. She looked at the sensor display. She said it quietly, almost to herself. I think I accidentally started something. The Mirathi ships withdrew in formation. Their drives burned a cold blue. They pulled away from the contested zone. They did not announce their departure. They simply left. Thea watched them go from the observation deck of the Remembrance. Her hands were flat against the glass. Her reflection stared back at her, pale, exhausted, but still standing. Ren stood beside her. His jaw was tight. He did not speak for a long time. They just left, he said finally. Yes. Why? Thea considered the question. The Mirathi had numerical superiority. They had weapons. They had legal standing. No neutral arbitrator would challenge it. By every measurable standard, the human fleet should have been dismantled within the hour. They counted the cost, Thea said, and the cost changed. Ren turned to look at her. What cost? We don't have anything they want. We have a story now. Thea pressed her palm flat against the cold surface, and the Strikavar are telling it. The formal communique arrived 6 hours later. It came on an official Strikavar military channel. It had encryption protocols. Tamsin could not crack them. This was Thea's proof. It was real. The Strikavar did not waste high-security encryption on threats. She read it standing in the corridor. Ren and Tamsin flanked her. The message was 73 words long. It used precise legal language. It contained no emotional appeals and no explanation. The contract was reinstated. Permanent port access at Shard 7 was granted. The fleet could stay. Thea read it twice. Then she folded the data tablet. She slid it into her jacket pocket. It's done, she said. Ren let out a breath he had been holding for years. Tamsin sat down against the wall. She put her face in her hands. Thea did not celebrate. She felt something else, something heavier than relief. She felt the weight of what they had become. The fleet meeting was held in the main cargo bay. Every possible person crowded into the space. The rest watched through internal relays. 4,892 faces stared at Thea from every angle. She stood on a crate with her hands in her pockets. She did not have a speech prepared. We are no longer refugees, she said. A murmur ran through the crowd. Someone laughed, someone else was crying. Thea waited for the noise to settle. We are guests now. That is better than being hunted, but it is not the same as being home. Silence, the kind of silence that listened. We are also something else. Thea looked across the faces. She saw children. She had watched them being born. She saw engineers. They had rebuilt the same engine 12 times. She saw farmers. They grew food in trays under artificial light. We are a story, she said. The Strikavar tell it to each other. The Sporwind have translated it. The Gravel Mind have logged it in their memory. They tell the story of the unstoppable species. She paused. That is our currency now. That is what keeps us alive. Not weapons, not treaties, not territory. A story about a rabbit and a fox, and the fact that we are still here. Someone in the back shouted a question. What comes next? Thea looked at Ren. He nodded. We find a world, she said. A real world, not a station with recycled air and artificial gravity. A planet, with soil, with water falling from the sky, with wind carrying the smell of growing things. She let the image settle. We build something, not just shelters, a civilization, a future. We stop running and start building. The cargo bay was silent. Then someone started clapping. The clapping spread. It became something louder. It sounded like hope. Thea stepped down from the crate. She found Ren in the crowd. That was good, he said. It was true, she said. That matters more. The corridor to the diplomatic berth was empty. Thea walked it alone. Her footsteps echoed on the metal floor. The air on Shard 7 was cold. It smelled of ozone and recycled chemicals. Vrathis waited at the viewport. His bronze scales caught the light from the station's internal glow. Thea approached. He did not turn. You came, he said. You asked. I did not expect you to. Thea stood beside him. The viewport looked out onto the docking ring. The Remembrance hung in the void. Its hull was scarred and patched. It was not a beautiful ship. It was a survivor. Traffic flowed around it. Strikavar freighters, Gemery couriers. A Sporwine transport carried something. It looked like vegetation. The station was alive with movement, and the human ship was part of it now. The Strikavar word for stranger, Mirathi said slowly, is the same as the word for debt. Thea looked at him. You have redefined that word, he said. Before you arrived, a stranger was something owed. A debt was a burden, something to be collected or discarded. He gestured toward the remembrance. Now the species sees you. You are not invisible anymore. You are a debt beyond calculation, a stranger refusing to be forgotten. Thea watched the ship. She thought about the oak sprig in her quarters. She thought about the rabbit in the tall grass. We have something, she said. The galaxy did not expect it. Mirathi turned to face her fully. His eyes were amber. They held no threat. They held curiosity. What? A story about ourselves. Thea met his gaze, and we refused to stop telling it. Mirathi considered this. His head tilted slightly. The gesture reminded her of a bird studying something unfamiliar. What does the story say? Thea smiled. It was a small smile. It did not reach her eyes entirely, but it was real. It carries a message. Small creatures outrun predators not through speed, through persistence, through the refusal to stop moving. Mirathi was silent for a long moment. That is not a strategy, he said. It is not. That is not a weapon. It is not. Then what is it? Thea looked out at the stars. They were scattered across the dark like seeds waiting for soil. She thought about every lost world. Humanity's lost worlds. She thought about the undiscovered ones. It is a promise, she said, to ourselves, to the dead, to the ones who come after. She turned away from the viewport. We are not dead yet. That is the only important story. She walked back down the corridor. Her footsteps echoed. She did not look back. Mirathi remained at the viewport. He watched her leave. He watched the human ship docked against the station. He watched the traffic flow around it. He had seen many species pass through Strikavar space. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had seen contracts signed and broken. He had seen the galaxy treat smaller species as resources, resources to be consumed. He had never seen a species weaponize a story. He had never seen 4,000 people refuse to die, refuse simply because they had decided not to. He touched the glass with one clawed finger. The ship beyond was small. It was damaged. It was carrying the last of its kind. And it was still moving. Mirathi did not understand humans. He did not think any Strikavar ever truly would, but he understood one thing now. The debt was not a burden. The debt was the shape of something new being born. He watched the ship until the shift change alarm sounded. Then he walked away. He had a report to file, a new contract to draft, a new word to think about. The word for stranger. The word for debt. The word for hope. Thea reached her quarters. She closed the door behind her. She stood in the dark for a moment. She let the silence settle around her. Then she crossed to the wall case. The dried oak sprig sat inside. It was brown and brittle. It had been alive once. It grew in soil. That soil no longer existed. She touched the glass. We are not dead yet, she whispered. The ship hummed around her. The station breathed. The galaxy turned. And humanity kept moving. That was the only story that mattered.